Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. You know, this hearing is about 10 years after 9/11 and what's the future for the military. And you've all used the word strategy, and you've all said that, you know, how, for example, military spending, it all has to be tied to strategy. Now, my question is the word strategy. I'm not sure at 9/11 that we were a military that was ready for what we were facing in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm not sure that when we talk about strategy in a very broad and generic way, whether we recognize how different and complex, for example, the Pacific is. You know, if you were to look at China, you probably would use a conventional strategy. Or North Korea, you'd probably look at a more conventional type of military strategy. But when you start to go to the South Pacific and you look at Philippines and the other areas where you have al-Qaeda presence, you may look at something like counterterrorism or this word counterinsurgency, and I'm still not quite sure what the difference is. But we have all of these different strategies. So how do we prepare for the future when we have such a, in my opinion, diverse types of arenas that we have to contend with? So, for example, even in the Pacific itself. So any one of you want to tell me how you then apply that to where we sit, which is, okay, how do you budget based on a strategy that may have 3 or 4 different heads? Thank you.
So as best I remember, in the late 1990s, we were looking at and budgeting for the potential of perhaps having to go to Iran and having to go to Korea as 2 possible places where your military would have to be employed. And we looked at the war plans then, the kinds of skills and equipment that would be needed to go to those 2 countries as examples. As has always happened, and seems to always happen, we ended up going to Afghanistan, or someplace we hadn't been thinking about. We sure as heck had not been thinking about Afghanistan. But the fact that we did not have correctly where we would have to go did not mean that we did not have correctly the kinds of capabilities that we would need to go wherever needed. And it was the planning for the possible Irans and the possible Koreas that gave us the equipment, the skills, the training that allowed us to go to Afghanistan as quickly as we did. So you're absolutely right, ma'am, to say that there's a plethora of things that can happen out there, each of which is unique, but there are some fundamental similarities amongst all the deployments, the size of the force, the speed, precision, interoperability, intelligence, the technical pieces of this. All of those are common threads that you can work on, train to, and fund, so that wherever you're called on, you can go do what you need to do.
Before everybody else says, General Pace, I understand that. However, one of the issues that we contend with is end strength. So I think end strength, if anything, is going to be defined by the quote arena that we're focusing on, and that makes the decisions, and that's what we're faced with. So I'll just toss it out to I saw everyone else reaching for their mics, so please. And after this, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
If I could just add, the General Pace talked about these plans. It's the process of planning, and I won't go through defense planning guidance and start naming all of the things that happen inside the Department of Defense, but it is this planning process that gives you the construct and provides the capabilities that you need to go after a certain set of scenarios. And as we said already, there are many surprises out there. There will always be surprises, and hopefully you can do them as lesser included cases in that overall planning process. I think General Pace and I are saying the same thing in 2 different ways.
Just to tag on to what they both said, but I think in terms of our planning, what General Pace was getting at is, you know, if you have a set of capabilities, you can scale those capabilities. So when we had to go to Afghanistan and Iraq, what we scaled, one of the force elements we scaled up was our special operations forces. So they've been the beneficiary of more manpower, more and newer equipment and so forth. And if you've got a military that can do a variety of tasks. You can scale. It takes you time. There's risk in that, and we found that out. There certainly is risk in not, but you can't afford to have it all ready at a moment's notice. I would just say, to go back, as I think you were saying or talking strategically, this all ought to stem from our vital national interests, at least in the executive branch. Define your vital national interest. Out of that comes your national security strategy, and out of that comes your military strategy. It finally gets down to your military strategy. And that is a construct that at our war colleges and so forth, people follow. And as we've talked about in this hearing, sometimes the urgency of our issues, the budget issue here in this particular case, we don't go through that construct. We just kind of get down to the budget, and then we hope that whatever's left will trickle back up. And as you look up at our vital national interests, oh yeah, we can support those, whatever they might be, in Asia Pacific or wherever around the world. So I would just remind people that there is really a construct that those that work in strategy try to follow. It's an imperfect world. We never do it perfectly.
Thank you, Ms. Hanabusa.